Hi, Charlotte.
Hello, Sarah.
Hi, Alan. How are you?
It's just fine and dandy.
Excellent. I can't see you though.
Why not?
Don't know. I see you're talking. There you go.
All you got to do is click the button, right?
Something like that. Sometimes you click the wrong button, and I've done that before.
Oh, I push a lot of wrong buttons.
Yeah, some of them I'm sure are figurative more than literal.
Metaphorical buttons.
Yes, exactly. So, what was I? So, y'all had, you don't have as much this week as you did last time, but you still have enough to go through.
Yeah. Any surprises we're expecting?
No, I don't think so. I mean, everybody's gotten a copy of their stuff. The MOA for 19 Woodbine, the technical applicant is the attorney for the estate of the woman who died. He's not very tech savvy. He's a lovely person, but he's not very tech savvy, so he might have a hard time. I told him that, it's going to be unlikely that you're going to ask anything of him anyhow. That it's really just a discussion amongst yourselves.
The only thing I had to query on that MOA was the date. It said it was in February. Was it really February when we looked at that?
Yes. Yeah. So initially it was February. The March meeting was canceled because that was the initial COVID stuff. And then, yeah, April was when it was preferably preserved. Yeah. And, here's the thing. It's like, so Sal Carusio is the one who wants to end up developing the property. And he would just like randomly send me stuff like, Sarah, here's a bunch of photos, here's a bunch of whatever. And I'm like, the hell am I, like, what the hell are you doing? Like, I had no idea what he was doing at some point. Because he's thinking, he sent me stuff, so his demo should be lifted. I'm like, no, that's not the way it works. And they're like, and so I didn't know who was doing what there. So finally I spoke with the estate agent, which is this Edwin Smith, and explained to him how things would go. And he's like, could we go in September? I said, I can't get you on the September agenda because it was just so huge. And I said, well, but we'll look at October. So here you have it. So he did ask me because Sal had already sent me some photos and architectural drawings. And he said, is what Sal has sent you sufficient? And I said, they're not labeled properly, and they're just basically a dump file on a Google Drive, which I can't really access. So I told him we'll have to look, he's going to have to do them according, if you approve, he's going to have to do it according to the conditions. And I'll have to look at the architectural plans again. I did hear from, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Just a procedural question.
Yeah.
I noticed in the new ordinance a couple of things. One of them is that it looks like public meetings have gone away for significance, and we now have public hearings for significance.
Yes, but everything, at least on your agenda tonight, came in before the new ordinance passed. So tonight you're just going to operate as you always have.
The new ordinance kicked in on September 28th.
Actually kicked in on October 5th.
No, September 28th. I have this from Mark Niedergang.
Well, so according to, I checked with the legal department. So two things. One, all these applications were filed prior to it passing that you're looking at tonight. Okay. For significance. So they're under the old ordinance. I also checked with the legal department on this because I had that very same question, because technically they voted on it on the 27th, right? Yeah. So you'd think it would come into effect on the 28th.
No, it said effective immediately.
Yes. So according to the legal department, and I told them all this stuff, they said until it's signed into law by the mayor, it's not in effect. And I was like, okay, fine, whatever. But bottom line is, I didn't have anything that came in that would be caught in a limbo.
Okay.
So it was formally, I guess, signed and in effect as of October 5th.
Right.
But again, I didn't have anything that came in the interim that would get caught in that limbo.
So 213 and 211.
Yeah,
They came in and that's going to be a public meeting.
that's correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Got
Correct.
it. These are just procedural questions I wanted to ask.
Yes, no, absolutely. And 872 Broadway, same thing, public meeting.
Yeah, I don't know if you've looked at 872 Broadway, but it's pretty unremarkable.
Oh, I have, okay, let me tell you, I haven't physically gone to see it, but I don't need to because it would probably make me sick to my stomach. It's a mess.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah, really.
mess. I do
I
suspect.
go up there opposite. There's a really, really cool Mexican restaurant there, Tu Wayu, which serves real Mexican food, not street food like you normally see.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it is
yeah.
a really, really good restaurant.
Yep.
So we eat up there and it's sort of 3 doors down from there. And I
Yes.
looked at it, I was going up to pick up some stuff and I thought, oh shit, this is bulldozer ready stuff.
That's right. That's right. I think under the Obama, like, Reinvestment Act, it's known as shovel ready.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, I still, like, even though there are these cases where you're just like, oh God, this is just a piece of crap. You still have to put the same effort into finding information about them, right? And it's can be a bloody nightmare sometimes.
Oh, I can tell.
Right? I mean, look at all the info there. I mean, in some ways, it's almost a waste of my time and your time because we know what the outcome is. And yet we have to do it.
For things that are so blatantly obvious, do you really have to go into that depth? Seriously?
Oh, I know. I know. I really want to, because we have some provisions there in the new code about discussing significance with staff and staff determining it and stuff like that. I'd really like to have a discussion with you about that because I think that there are some things that are so, like, I know how you operate now. I know how the commission operates and I know how you think, and we're thinking on the same wavelength. And anything I have a question about, because I'm going to ask you a question in 2 seconds actually, because I'm not quite sure how you want to deal with it. Like, I know when to bring something to you guys. And maybe we should also do something where we set up a system whereby instead of having to wait for a meeting of the full commission to like ask you, well, I have to be careful about asking you things for things that are going to come before you but aren't. Like, is there something whereby I could meet with you and talk with you and just say, hey, Alan, look at this property. Does this really make any sense to you? And have them give you the power to have that determination. So here's the thing. So you looked at 211, 211 and 213 Holland, right?
Yep.
So also on that property is a garage. And I didn't advertise, huh?
Yes.
Yes. And I didn't advertise. Yeah, I didn't advertise for the garage. So that's not under consideration tonight. So initially, so I hadn't advertised for it. They are going to put, they do want to take it down. And initially, and I didn't advertise for it. And then I asked for more pictures of it. And because I knew it was concrete. So it's concrete. It's a poured concrete garage. And it's like everything we typically see. The only reason I hesitate now and might have to advertise it for next time for significance is because there's a small lean-to in the back that's wood framed. So I can sign off on concrete buildings, but the reason I haven't done that yet is because it has a small wood framed like lean-to. And so I'll be honest with you, and I'd like to go over pictures of it with you after, sometime later this week. My personal opinion is let's I think it can go, but if it weren't for that wood frame section, I would have done that already. And that's
Okay.
why I wanted to bring that up with you. So Alan, that's an example of how like I want, I know how you think, and like, I know where the line is and like what the questions are. So like, if that's something that you and I can figure out together, if it's okay with the commission, that's great.
Good. So
So,
do we have a quorum tonight?
well, we better. Yeah, well, here's somebody else coming on. Hey,
Eric.
Eric.
Hey,
Yeah.
Eric.
Up to 2. How's it going?
Are you in your
Good.
pajamas?
No. It's a white shirt. Flannel. I don't know.
Okay. Just look like PJs at first glance.
Just
don't-
leave it to the Aussies.
I don't go easily into the winter. I wear shorts and short sleeves until the last possible moment.
That's what I
Yes,
do
so
too. Yeah, that's
so
what I
do
do too.
Like yourself, like, when your temper's steel, keep it going.
I did hear from Adam that he had a last minute family issue come up. Like it was like literally 15 minutes before the meeting. And Ryan is hoping to join. He was planning on joining, but he is out of town and was planning to join from out of town, but they had like an outage. He's in P-town, and they had a major outage. So like a good portion of Cape Cod is out of power or internet right now. So he's going to try and do the best he can. I know Caitlin is coming. Mark should be here. Dick said he wasn't going to be here unless we needed a quorum. I mean, if we really need to, we can call him or whatnot, but hopefully that won't be the case.
And this is Robin. I'm here. I'm just not on camera.
Oh, good.
And this is Mark. I'm here too.
Oh my
Okay.
God, even better. So fabulous. Why aren't you
But I'm
guys on
leaving,
camera?
I'm leaving at 7 and coming back at 8. I've got a 7 to 8 conflict.
That's right.
Oh.
That's right. You guys aren't on camera because you
I
just want
can't
to look
figure
at.
out how to make my camera work, so.
I've just lost it, so I need to log back in again.
We
Camera.
can see you out, Alan.
What?
We can see you.
I can't see anything.
Oh,
Telling
did
me
you?
I have a session running.
I don't know. When I pop up the thing, I had to click on the video
There
camera.
you go.
We lost Ellen.
Okay. I'm back.
Oh.
I don't know what happened.
Are you guys hearing cello in the background?
Yes.
Yeah, it's nice.
All right. That's my son. I don't know. I might have to mute myself when this starts. He has a Zoom cello lesson going on.
It's very faint. We can hardly hear it. Well, I've got these on, so. Hey, Caitlin.
Oh,
Hi, everyone.
So we've got Caitlin and Mark.
And Robin.
Robin's there. Hi, Robin.
Hi.
I want you all to know before we start, I lobbed Anthony Grassetto an email because I'm particularly, since we're not live yet, I'm particularly pissed that he hasn't been attending.
Sarah,
Yes.
we might actually be alive.
Hi, folks. Well, I'm particularly annoyed that somebody hasn't been attending, so we'll see if he's going to join us.
All right, so do we have a quorum?
1, 2.
I see 5.
What happens when Mark needs to leave at 7?
We
He
have
will
4.
need to state that he's leaving, and we'll note that in the records. And when he comes back, he'll state that he's back.
I can do that.
We're
fine with 4 of us.
Yes, we are.
Will we be? I know Josh Softy through work, so I don't know if I should recuse myself from that conversation.
you know, it doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
So if you can do, if you need me for the quorum, if you could do that either before 7 or, as seems more likely, after 8, I'll be back by then.
Very good. All right, can you guys hold on for one quick second?
Holding on. Grimly. I'm glad to see everybody is still avoiding this COVID thing.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, really. We're going to have to live with it for probably quite a while yet.
Thought there was a vaccine coming out in a couple weeks.
Well, the good
think-
news is
I
I'm going
think
to get it before you because I'm a senior.
Guys, I think you're live. So if
Okay.
you haven't started, yeah, so if you haven't started the meeting, we'll start it in a second, but I think it's actually, I think the broadcast is actually live right now.
Okay.
All right, well, in that case, we can start because what we've got as the first item on the agenda is a review of the memorandum of agreement for 19 Woodbine Street.
Okay, hold on one second. I need to get this sequentially. We need to go through that and formally start the meeting and call it to order, but let me
Yeah.
figure out one tech issue first. 1 second. Okay, Mr. Chairman, you can call the meeting to order and call your first case after that. And
Okay,
we'll
good.
roll call votes and we'll introduce ourselves and note who is here.
Yes. All right, well, I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is a meeting of the Somerville Historic Preservation Commission. The date is 20th of October, 2020, and the time is 6:50 p.m. I'd like to start off, we're going to go through the agenda in sequence. I'd like to start off by everybody introducing themselves. My name is Alan Bingham. I'm the chair of the commission. I'm a historic home owner and in Ward 6. Mark?
I'm Mark Sternman. I'm the vice chair of the commission and I'm a resident of Ward 5.
Caitlin?
I am Caitlin Hart. I'm the architectural historian member and the secretary and a resident of Ward 2.
And Robin?
I'm the Realtor representative on the commission and also a historic homeowner in Union Square.
And Eric?
I am Eric. I'm a Ward 3 resident, historic homeowner, and architect.
And staff?
Sarah White,
Staff?
planner and preservation plan. Sarah White, planner and preservation planner for the city of Somerville.
Okay, so with that, I'd like to move on to the first thing, which is a memorandum of agreement for 19 Woodbine Street. This is a matter that first came before the commission back in February, I believe. And we have a draft memorandum up for the commissioners to read, review, and add anything to. Has everybody had a chance to review this?
Yes.
Yes, I have too. Caitlin is nodding, that means yes.
Yes.
I can't see Robin, but I can see Eric.
Mr. Chairman, this is Mark. I have just a very picky comment on the very last paragraph on page 2. I believe there's a closed parenthesis missing in the second line after OSPCD. There's definitely a closed parenthesis missing. I think that's where it goes, but Sarah or someone else can correct me if I'm putting it in the wrong spot.
Yeah, I'll take a look at it. There might be sometimes I use double parentheses and sometimes the second one gets lopped off.
Apart from that, does it look in order?
Looks fine to me.
Caitlin, Robin?
Same, yes.
Yes.
All right, then I'd like to put this to a vote. All those in favor of accepting the memorandum of agreement with that one qualification as for the parentheses to be verified as mentioned by Mark Sternman, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And I'll do the quick roll call just so that we have it for the record. Robin?
Aye, yes.
Caitlin?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
And Alan agrees too. Okay. So the next thing we have is the determinations of appropriateness. And we have HPC.ALT 2020.22, which is 56 Bow Street, which is re-advertised. We met on this. This is the second story porch. The applicant would like to withdraw their application to remove the second story porch. This was after much discussion. They have made a written request to that effect.
That's
So
correct.
I'd like to put this to the vote. All those in favor of accepting their letter and application to withdraw their application to remove, please say aye.
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 Okay, once again, I'll go through the roll call. Robin?
Yes.
Caitlin?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
And myself, Alan. Okay. The next issue we have, HPC.ALT 2020.20 is 15 Campbell Park, which is continued, well not continued, but it's re-advertised from previous discussions. And this is to, just for the recall of everybody, this was to replace windows and to rebuild a porch and put in a dormer as well on their property. And we determined that some things were going to be allowed under a certificate of appropriateness, but some were, you're going to come back to us, especially on the windows. So I wonder, is the applicant here with us at this point in time?
Mr. Chairman, I'm looking at the attendee list and I don't see the applicant's agent or the applicant right now. If you are here to represent 15 Campbell Park, please raise your hand virtually. If not, Mr. Chairman, I am going to ask that we set this aside and come back to it later in the meeting. And then I can keep checking to see if the applicant or their agent shows up, because, you know, we would like to have their input.
Absolutely.
And I still don't see them.
Because as I recall, they were going to come back to us with information on the status of the windows, documented status on the windows.
Yeah, and that is in the report, and I can discuss that. But I would like them to engage with you as well.
I think any discussion we have they should be present. So
I agree.
With that said, let's put that aside for the time being, and we'll move on to 145 Central Street, which is HPC.ALT 2020.38. Is Mr. Josh Salfie there?
Yes, I
He's
am.
the applicant. Oh,
And
good.
just real quick, this is Caitlin. I'm going to recuse myself. Hi, Josh. Nice to talk to you again today.
Okay, you too.
Thanks.
Okay. Over to you, Mr. Softy. Were you present
Sorry,
when we all
Alan,
introduced
Alan,
ourselves?
this is Mark. If I could interrupt, unless we're going to deal with this in the next 3 minutes, I think you're going to want to push this back till after 8 o'clock when I return. Unless we can do it with Caitlin still counting for the quorum, but having recused herself.
Yes, Caitlin
We
can
have-
stay.
We have Robin on the line as well. Correct, Robin?
Yeah, so if Robin, Eric, and Alan and Caitlin recused make up a quorum, then please proceed.
And
Let me just ask really
Caitlin
quickly.
Caitlin can stay in the discussion, but actually not cast a vote.
If you recuse, you should recuse yourself entirely and not even participate in the discussion. Robin, can I ask you to unmute yourself?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure that you are here, and then with the 3 members that we have remaining, we'll be all set.
Okay, so I'm going to sign off now, and I will let you know when I sign back on at 8 o'clock. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank
Thanks,
you.
Mark.
Hi, Mark.
Okay, sorry about that, Mr. Sifty. Would you like to please talk to us?
Yes, thanks. I'm in front of you tonight regarding a matter which is much simpler than the last time I was here in front of you. I will be back at some point to talk more about the larger project I'd like to do, but for the time being, we've had street work, sidewalks replaced on Medford Street adjacent to my house. I had an existing fence that I'm replacing in kind, for which staff have already issued the needed certificate. And what I'm asking to do tonight is to take an existing picket fence, which at the moment does not fully enclose the very, very small side yard of my property, and to extend it using the same design and materials and company, actually, the rest of the side yard along Medford Street, now that all of that sidewalk work is complete.
This is the picket fence and it's going backwards from where you were? Or forwards
Correct.
to the front?
So currently the majority of our row of 5 homes, VZ row, they're all single family homes, but most of us have matched picket fencing along the front of the property. And so I'm the corner, my wife and I are the corner lot, and that picket fence up until now turned the corner and then stopped and lowered itself to sort of make something of a comfortable architectural pause. And so what I'm proposing to do is to extend it at that lower height for the rest of the length of the yard, which is currently unenclosed along Medford Street.
Okay. Eric, Robin, any thoughts on this?
I don't have any concerns about it, given that it's the same fencing that's being used at an existing height where it stops. It's also not impacting the historic structure and could be changed in the future.
I would agree. It's continuing existing fence. It's appropriate. And there's nothing not to like about this proposal.
Yeah, I think it would be consistent with the block of row houses, actually, to do that. All right, and given that, I think what we could do is we could move to a vote on that. I'd like to put this vote, this is a vote for a certificate of appropriateness, HPC or 2020.38, 145 Central Street. And this is to extend the decorative picket wood fence according to the description that is provided to the city staff. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, Robin?
Yes.
Caitlin is recused. Eric?
Yes.
And Mark is absent. All right, Josh, looks like you're good to go as soon as Sarah issues the official nod for you. All right?
Great. Thanks very much for your time.
Good luck with the project.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Yeah, you too. Thanks. Okay, Caitlin, you're back on deck again.
I am. Thank you.
Good. Let's move on to determination of historical significance. And we'll go to hpc.dmo.2020. Well, before we do, let's just go back and check to see if Mr. Del Porto from 15 Campbell Park is here before we go off certificates of appropriateness.
I don't see him. I am looking for his agent and I don't see him either.
All right, then let's move Sarah, let's move directly on to historic significance determinations. And this is 211 Holland Street, hpc.dmo 2020.21. Is the applicant here?
Adam Dash, who is representing the applicant, is here. And Charlotte, could I ask you to unmute him because sometimes we cross unmute each other. Thank you.
He's unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Despite Mr. Sturman's statement, you did finish the last item in 3 minutes. So,
Well, you know.
and I very much appreciate that. Yeah, Adam Dash, 48 Grove Street in Somerville. I represent Silva Realty 8 LLC. This is regarding 211 Holland Street. I'm going to talk a little bit about also 213 Holland Street because it's really impossible to talk about one without the other, although I acknowledge that they're two separate applications and we can do this all over again when you call the next matter. But my clients, Ted and Mark Silva, you know, they are, Ted's an attorney in Teal Square down the street where he has his office. They're Somerville folks and they've done development in town and they've done a good job with it. I would notice regarding 211 Holland Street, which is just the house, which is all this property is, that according to the staff research, the properties 211 and 213 apparently were both one property at one point in the past. And they are now oddly divided, especially when you see 213 with that weird, what they call flag lot under the new zoning with the long pole part and then sort of the square on the back. So for speaking to 211 Holland Street, this is a two-family house. I would admit it's a nice house. I don't know if it's a unique house, but it's hard to discuss one without the other, as I said, because the relationship of the 211 structure and its lot to the 213 lot is an awkward situation, which makes the flag lot out of 213 because of the way 211 is located. And under the new zoning, flag lots are prohibited actually, and actually the width of the flag lot 213 is limited to the width of the pole on the street, the pole part, which means that 213, the lot is only 10 feet wide, which is absurd. So the situation is sort of such that in order to bring 213 into compliance with the new zoning, you can't do that with the 211 building there. The idea would be rejoining these two lots to their historic configuration of one lot and doing a project there because that's historically what they were. But unfortunately, the lot is just why it was built the way it was built. I don't know. It's an odd situation down there. But I certainly, you know, I appreciate the staff's research on 211. We all learn new things every time we go through this process about the history of particular properties, and it was interesting. I certainly can understand how you would go one way or the other on this one, but that is the situation.
Right. I grew up actually, Adam, calling those sorts of lots not flag lots, but battle axe blocks.
I'm just using the term that's the term that the new zoning calls them is flag lots.
Yes, I know. I still have to sort of reinterpret things into my language, if you know what I mean. All right. I hear what you're saying about this, and we want to look at 211 and 213 separately because we're going to vote on them separately.
Of course.
And I understand the zoning issues with that. It becomes quite complicated. Open this for discussions. Eric and Caitlin, Robin, would you like to kick off the discussions on this? And I think let's talk about 211 first.
It looks like a very nice house. It's impressive that it has retained as much of its original form and massing, including some of the decorative shingling and those applications. But, it reads very much as a historic house.
Hmm.
Yeah, I would agree. Just looking at it here, it's fairly intact, has its original siding. The only change has been windows and gutters. So, I mean, it's a good example. It's a Queen Anne, retains all of its original massing, much of its original envelope. So it seems like a pretty worthwhile building in that respect.
Caitlin, do you have anything to add to that?
No, the primary reason I find it significant are kind of the reasons that Robin and Eric mentioned about it being a great example of Queen Anne architecture that retains its integrity. I wonder if other commissioners have ideas about, there's the architectural side of things, but then Sarah also found some information on Phillips and his role in the city. And I don't feel as strongly about that, but I know that we should also consider kind of associations with people of importance. So I wanted to throw that out there and see what others had to say.
Yeah, I had a close look at this, and I like the square turret on it, which is a Queen Anne square turret. Mostly those turrets are circular around, and I find this to be, a very well preserved example on the outside. And I would agree with Eric. It's just the windows basically, and I think the roof and the gutters and downspouts. But apart from that, I think it keeps a lot of its detail and a lot of its form. So it's an interesting example as far as I see. Are there any other thoughts on it? Okay, I'm seeing that we have looked at this and seen it as being a good example of the Queen Anne, that it's got the integrity and the form still all extant. Was there anything else that we saw about this? And I know that this has some local cultural significance in that I believe one of the aldermen way back when actually lived here. I don't know how remarkable that is in the historic context. I mean, we have a lot of unremarkable aldermen and councillors, I might add. I don't see that there's anything in that aldermanic occupancy that would be of compelling historic interest. Caitlin, Robin, Eric, you want to remark on that?
I would agree with that. I don't think the fact that the house had an alderman or council living in it in its own makes it preservable for that reason alone.
I agree with that.
Yeah, it's not like it was Tip O'Neill's house on Orchard Street. And Tip O'Neill was a remarkable person. I mean, this is just a city alderman who doesn't have a lot in the books. I did a bit of research on him. So, all right. And is there anything else, Eric, that you'd like to add to findings on this, that you think that this is significant? Because then I
think we've really touched on it, the integrity of what remains, and it's a good example of a Queen Anne. And as you mentioned, it's got a square turret rather than round, which is not so common. I don't know if there's any reason to mention the streetscape, which is, you're looking at just about the only remaining, I mean, this and the one next to it. So it's not that it's part of a collection of buildings, but it does have value because it's part of a dying presence of the history of that stretch of Holland. So I don't know what people think about that. Does that increase or decrease its value as a historic, or as it's not historic, it's significance?
Well, I think so, because when I look at it, the three buildings towards Teal Square that we looked at previously on Holland Street were all quite unremarkable. Interesting buildings, but the one that's towards Davis Square next to it is another example of a Queen Anne. And they are the only two Queen Annes that I could find on Holland Street. There are lots of triple deckers, but no Queen Annes, and they're in a very significant place as you come up the hill right onto Teal Square.
Yeah.
Mr.
So
Chairman?
I think the streetscape does matter. Yes, Sarah, you had a.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have seen some questions come across from members of the public. Would you allow me to briefly explain the process for when we take
Well,
public comment and when we don't take public comment?
Well, this is a public meeting, so we can't take public comment. Were it a public
Right.
hearing, we could. And quite frankly, if we vote to find this property significant, then next month we would be looking at it as a determination whether it should be preferably preserved or not, and what that really means. And that will be a public hearing where the public can enter their thoughts and discussions on this. But I know there is some public interest in this property. But unfortunately, with this, we can't take public inputs. Is that what you were going to say, Sarah?
That is, yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was going to add that for the determination of historic significance, it doesn't get open to public comment at a meeting, but preferably preserved. If it goes to that, it does.
Yes.
The other thing that I wanted to mention to the public too is that the Historic Preservation Commission does not have any purview at all over what gets developed on the property after demolition. It's not in their authority at all. So they will never receive plans or proposals for what will be potentially built there. The last thing I wanted to mention is some of you might know that a new demolition review ordinance was passed by the council. You probably heard us talking about it earlier before the meeting started in late September. It became official.
September.
The 27th of September became official October 5th. However, these applications came in before that new ordinance passed. So that means that we follow the procedures laid out under the old demolition review ordinance, not the new one. The new demolition review ordinance, for any applications for demolition that come in since that has become a live ordinance, then public comment will be able to be taken at this stage, at the historic significance stage in the process. That was one of the things that we wrote in to change about the ordinance. But because these are under the old, this is under the old ordinance, then we have to follow those procedures. So no public comment until the preferably preserved portion of the process, if it gets to that. And that would be at the next meeting.
However,
you,
just add to that, if you do have any comments that you'd like to submit in support of a position one way or the other, you could send those by email to Sarah White, which would be swhite@somervillema.gov. And that is one way that you can submit comments.
That's right. And I pass them all on to the HPC as I receive them. You can also send them to historic@somervillema.gov, which would be contained in, that's at the bottom of the agenda, and that's also in the legal notices that were sent out as well.
Okay. So with that, thank you, Sarah. Much appreciated. With that, I think we're ready to put this to a vote with the commissioners. We're going to be voting on a determination of historic significance for 211 Holland Street, which is HPC.DMO.2020.21. All those in favour of declaring this property significant, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
I'm going to do a roll call on this as well. Robin?
Yes.
Caitlin?
Yes.
Eric? You're muted, Eric.
Yeah, I was muted, sorry, yes.
Mark is not with us, so I put him down as not being present for this, and I vote yes. Okay, so we've declared this to be historically significant. Now, what I'd like to do is I'd like to also document the reasons, because under the ordinance, we have to have reasons why we've found it significant. It's not just a subjective thing on our part. It is based on the findings that we have that are consistent with the Secretary of the Interior and the National Park Service. And those findings are that we have here a Queen Anne home, which is a good example of a Queen Anne, which is unique in its square turret, and it has the integrity in situ and the form, and the details are largely in place. Were there any other findings we need to add to that? Caitlin, Eric, Robin? Okay.
No, those were the primary ones I thought.
Yes.
Yeah. Agreed.
Okay. Now, for the sake of people that are here and listening, what this means, and Adam, Dash, this means that next month we'll be looking at this as preferably preserved. And what preferably preserved could mean anything from actually keeping the property in situ, looking at ways to preserve it, possibly by selling it or restoring it, or making some adjustments to it that suits the owner. And we have then, if we declare it to be preferably preserved, we have a period of 9 months in which we have time to negotiate with the owners as to what that actually means. So somewhere on a continuum for keeping it completely as it is, with any restoration and any repairs in kind, down to doing basically photographic documentation and artist diagrams of the building so that we can archive it, would be in that preferably preserved continuum. And we have 9 months in which to do that. So that is if we find it preferably preserved next month. If we do not find it preferably preserved, then staff would be able to release it to ISD so that the applicant could then apply for a demolition permit. And as staff indicated, we are not concerned in historic preservation as to what might replace it. That is out of our purview, unfortunately, but we do not look at that at all. All we look at is the historic significance of this particular property as it is to the city. I hope that clarifies things for the public that are listening.
Mr. Chair, just for the public as well, the next hearing would be on the 17th of November, is that right?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay.
And Sarah and Alan, do we need to vote on those findings as well?
We are.
Yeah, okay,
We are.
okay, sorry.
Okay, so I'm going to put this to the vote. We're going to vote on the findings as I outlined for 211 Holland Street, which is hpc.dmo.2020.21. All those in favor of the findings as we iterated, please say yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to do the roll call again. That's Robin,
Yes.
Caitlin,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
and myself, Alan. Okay. So Adam Dash, we found it to be significant.
So I hear. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Now we want to move on to 213 Holland Street.
That is correct.
Which is hpc.dmo.2020.22. Would you like to address this as well?
I would, Mr. Chair. I'll try not to repeat myself here, but because the two sort of work in tandem. But yes, Adam Dash, 48 Grove Street, representing Silva Realty 8 LLC, the owner of the property and the applicant under this application. Again, this is part of one time joined with the 211 property, but is now this flag lot with a structure, a single family structure in the rear. I would posit there's nothing particularly significant about the structure in the rear, nor is it easily seen from the public way, as it's tucked behind 211 that we just discussed. There is a concrete block garage there with a small wooden shed attached to it, which was part of our application but was not part of the advertising. I don't know whether that is going to be dealt with as a concrete block garage, or whether having that little wooden shed attached to it makes it not a concrete block garage and have to come before you. But that, just so you know, the original application was for the house and the 3-car garage with that little wooden attachment. There's no real style to speak of to this 213 house. The lot is actually mostly pavement. I note that the staff didn't really find much evidence of its history, which is unusual, and I would say is a testament to actually its lack of significance. I don't think I've ever seen a property where there's actually very little to no information about the structure whatsoever. As I said before, it's on a flag lot, which is a prohibited lot type under the new zoning. The alderman, Mr. Phillips, not that it means anything, was maybe associated with 211. I don't see any association in particular with 213 in the rear. And the relationship of the two is a bit of conjecture as to whether it was ever stable or used with 211. Even if it's true, I don't see any barn there at 213. I mean, if that was a barn, it has been altered beyond all possible recognition at this point. And I believe the staff report clarifies that. So we don't believe that 213, I understand your findings on 211. I don't see it on 213. Frankly.
Okay, once again, this is a public meeting, not a public hearing, so this discussion will be confined just to the commissioners at this point in time. So would the commissioners like to discuss this? Eric, Caitlin, Robin?
I'd be inclined to agree with that sentiment in a sense that it doesn't speak to a particular style. It doesn't have a presence on the streetscape that really affects it in any way. I don't see a lot there with this particular building. It has an interesting roof line. I guess that's the only thing, but I don't think that's really because of a particular style they're following. It's just the way they did it. It's my initial thought.
Yeah. Robin, Caitlin?
Yeah, I am not seeing a whole lot of there. It's hard to identify anything that's notably historic or original, or we don't know what the original might have been.
I agree with Eric and Robin's comments, and I just wanted to ask to Adam's point about the garage structure. Sarah, is that something that is coming under staff review because it is a concrete block garage?
Thanks for the question. Alan and I, Mr. Chairman and I were talking about this at the beginning of the meeting. I think it might have been right when you jumped on, but I think some members of the public were already here as we were just having that informal discussion. And so that was one of the things that I was wondering, because normally it's concrete structures are normally something that staff signs off on. And I normally would have signed off on this were it not for the fact that there's a small, almost like wood frame lean-to at the back. And so because my authorization talks about concrete structures, and that is not a 100% concrete structure because of that addition, I didn't feel comfortable doing it. So that's why I was talking that over with Alan beforehand. So it wasn't advertised. I think it's something that we could definitely talk about, and that you know, if as a commission, the commission is comfortable with, you know, me discussing these things with Alan eventually and seeing what he thinks, and then going from there if I have any questions. Because I don't presume to know everything that you guys want to do, naturally, because I'm not you. I am you in my own community, but not you there. So what I might do in my community is very different than what you would do in yours. So, yeah, so that's why it wasn't advertised. And I did get some updated pictures from Mr. Dash, which really helped clarify what the interior of that looked like for me. So I think that's a decision that I really need to make in the next, that we need to make in the next couple of days, as to, you know, whether or not we'll advertise it for next time, or whether it's sufficient enough that it's just like, it really is like 99.9% a concrete garage, so.
Thank you. Sorry I missed that discussion, but that makes a lot of sense.
That's all right. Sorry, I see like questions coming in at the same time, so I hope that wasn't like terribly elongated, but
No, it was perfect. Thanks.
good.
Yeah, and our ability to delegate has actually been codified in the new ordinance. You probably see that. I think it's in item 6. But it even though this precedes we're on the old ordinance for this particular thing, this particular application, it does talk about the permit staff review of significance of concrete block garages, outbuildings, sheds, and similar accessory buildings. So this is something that in discussing this revised ordinance over a number of years, to get to where we are, that this was something that we thought was quite important. So if you're good with me talking to Sarah about that, I think this, personally, I think this is something that we can delegate, because it's basically a lean-to addition on a concrete garage.
Mhm.
So, and we've already delegated the authority for concrete garages. But we'll do that separately, because that wasn't advertised. So we need to stick to what was advertised to keep it completely kosher.
But about a
So-
valuable question. I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yeah, thank you both. That's all clear to me now.
So we're looking at 213 Holland Street, HPC.DMO 2020.22, and we're going to vote on the determination of significance of this particular structure. All those in favor of declaring it significant, please say aye. All those in favor of declaring it not significant, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So let me do the roll call. Okay, that would be Robin,
Yes.
Caitlin,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
and I say it's not significant. Okay. So Councillor Dash,
Yes, sir.
you hear that? We've declared it to be not significant, 213.
The house,
and-
yes. Yeah.
And staff will respond to you on the garage and the lean-to out accessory building. I don't know what you call it, in short order.
I appreciate
Okay.
that, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. As a matter of interest, do you have a copy of the new ordinance?
Do I? It's online. I mean, and
Yeah,
that
okay.
exists on the internet. Yes, I do.
Okay, good. Thank you. That was just by the by.
No, thank you. I appreciate you pointing it out, though.
Okay, thanks. We don't need to do any findings on that because we didn't declare it significant. So let's move on to HPC.DMO.2020.23, which is 872 Broadway. Is the applicant here? It's Mr. Sassoon, Ilan Sassoon.
Yes, Anne Vigorito is here representing Mr. Sassoon. Charlotte, would you be able to unmute Anne? And let me see. And Ilan Sassoon is here as well. Could you unmute Ilan? I'm going to do it. Anne, you're unmuted.
Good
And
evening, everyone.
Ilan,
Good
I'm going to
evening.
unmute him in 1 second. Okay, Ilan, don't touch your mute button. There you go. All right, now you're all set. And I think that's it. Anybody else, Anne?
There is an architect Lon, is the architect on as well?
I believe he is. Philip Seema, if you want to hear from him, he should be available. I
Okay,
think.
Philip, don't touch the buttons. I'm gonna unmute you.
Okay,
Now somebody's not playing along.
did the applicants hear our explanation earlier on historic preservation?
Yes.
And the significance and preferably preserved? Good. And were you also online when we introduced ourselves?
Yes, I was.
Good. And would you like to tell us about this?
Sure. Good evening, Ann Vigorito. I'm an attorney at 424 Broadway, Somerville, Massachusetts. I am representing the applicant for 872 Broadway, which is Alon Sassoon. We are also joined, as previously stated, the architect in case there are any questions. The property at 872 Broadway is a single-family home. It sits along next to the block of stores on the corner. If you're familiar with the area where Powder House Circle is in that vicinity, I just to give you that as a point of location. But I did hear when you folks began about, first of all, the amount of done by Ms. White it was great reading. It was very interesting. I mean, the background of this property versus what it looks like are two very different things, I must say. I mean, this building has been heavily modified over the years. I know there's like a left roof change. The open front porch and the right front facade falls under a 2-story left sloping gable projection. The street level single-story brick addition runs the length of the front facade. As I look at it, and I feel terrible saying, but it's like a hodgepodge of variations. I think I may be echoing Eric earlier saying, but there's really no presence with this house on that street. A lot of times there would be, something just, you stand there and you just look at it and it's off. Unfortunately, I don't get that with this particular building. The family dwelling, I should say.
Somebody might want to mute themselves. There's a lot of racket going on in the background of somebody there.
Because I'm home alone. Someone muted themselves.
Thank you, whoever did that.
But we would be looking for this to be considered not significant.
Right, thank you. Did any of the other people in the applicant's team wish to say something?
I think, Mr. Sassoon echoes what, I just stated to the board.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. What I'd like to do is open this up for commissioners for discussion. I'm presuming that we've all had a look at this interesting building. Eric, Caitlin, have you seen it? What are your thoughts on this?
You want? Sure. I kind of am not, it doesn't seem terribly significant. I mean, the fact that it's been modified a lot does, so it no longer reflects the way it was built in that respect. Sometimes though, a building can be modified a lot and that can be part of its charm. I don't know that it really gained a lot from that process in this case. It's not incredibly old. It's not really part of a pattern on the street. So I'm not so attached to it from a significance standpoint. There, obviously it has, from just an outright design angle, there's importance to that site, but that's not really our purview. So that's my first thought.
Robin?
Yeah, I mean, the degree of modification has really clouded any historic significance in my mind, any presence, street presence. there is, as Anne was saying, it's a hodgepodge. You know, you've got 5 different gable roof lines and other varieties of roof lines. It's just, there's a lot going on, and it's not coherent or cohesive or anything, I think, that is worth protecting.
Yeah, I'm not sure that it really adds anything of historic significance to the street or to the city at all. It's one of those buildings that's suffered from add-ons over the years and has lost any charm, I think, that it ever had. And Caitlin, I see you're nodding your head at that.
Yeah, I think Eric articulated it well in recognizing that sometimes additions can be historic or part of the story, but for the structure itself, it's hard to parse out what that story might be. So I would tend to agree with folks' comments.
Yes, and we're unable to find that it was importantly associated with any significant characters within the city itself as well. So looking at it from both the cultural and the architectural perspective, I'm failing to see very much in the way of significance. So, well, let's put this to the vote then. We're going to vote. Yeah.
Could I say, yeah, could I make one comment?
Yeah.
So, I just want, thank you very much. So through the chair. So I just want to, I wanted to say 2 things. And for those who were, listening to us speak earlier, I think that it's important for the public to realize that, and this is something, Mr. Chairman, you've always said, that however you are going to vote on this is however you're going to vote on it. But the HPC tries to be very judicious in their determinations about what's historically significant, what should be preferably preserved. And I think, as Mr. Chairman has said many times in testimony, that there are some buildings that are worth preserving, and other buildings that are okay for being redeveloped. Whether you want to call them bulldozer ready or development ready or what have you, right? And this might be one of those buildings. But what I did want to say is that it doesn't go unrecognized by the commission or by staff or anyone that, irrespective of what we might think of how the amalgam of additions now come to be read in a building, that doesn't negate the importance of this having been somebody's home, right? These additions were made for somebody because there was a need, right? Whatever that need was. And so whatever determination the commission makes does not negate the fact that they're very cognizant that people over time made changes out of necessity. And so it places no comment on the choices for why those additions and changes were made to a building. So I just wanted to say that, because that's come up a couple of times in a couple of other conversations that I've had in the last few months with people. So I just wanted to make that clarifying statement. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I think that's important. And I think it's also important to realize that we have guidelines to follow as well. And in looking at this, we're looking to see what those significant features are that would contribute towards the architectural history and the architectural preservation within the city. And it's not our intent to make Somerville into a historic museum. It's our intent to preserve the good examples where we can, and to repurpose those where we can't completely preserve something. So yes, and there are many buildings in the city that, as you say, could be shovel ready. But anyway, with that said, let's move on and put this to the vote. We're going to vote on HPC.DMO 2020.23, which is 872 Broadway. We're going to vote as to whether this should be significant. All those in favor of declaring this significant, please say aye. Hearing none. All those who vote to say that this is not significant, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, I'll do the roll call again. Robin?
Yes.
Caitlin,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
and Alan. And Mark is still not back with us, so Mark isn't voting. Okay, so Elan and Anne, we've declared this to be not significant. And
Thank
you'll be contacted by Sarah White over the next steps.
Thank
Good
you
luck
very
with
much.
the project.
Good evening.
Okay. From here, we're going to move on to determinations of preferably preserved, which is the second step in the demolition review process. These are places that have already been reviewed and found to be significant. The first one we'll look at will be HPC.DMO 2020.18, which is 40 Dickinson Street, which came before us. And they've submitted apparently a written request to continue this portion of the demolition review until next month's meeting. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to put this to a vote of the commissioners to accept this continuation. All those in favor of accepting the continuance of HPC.DMO 2020.18 40 Dickinson Street, please say aye. Aye. Okay, and once again, the roll call is Robin,
Yes.
Caitlin,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
and Alan, yes. Okay, so continued to next month. The next item we have on the list is HPC.DMO.2020.19 24 Webster Avenue. Is the applicant with us? Sarah? Oh,
Yes, Craig Nicholson is with us. Craig, I'm going to unmute you right now. Okay, and Craig is self-muted. I don't see anybody else here from the applicant team. And is it just you, Craig?
Yep.
Okay, very good.
okay, Craig. We went through this process with you last month and discussed this. Or would you like to bring us up to date?
Yeah, I think you know, we're interested in working with the city and the commission on this building. We've been working with the OSPCD in regards to our plans to develop a 100% affordable project on this site. There's I know you don't necessarily take this into account, but there's obviously a housing crisis going on, an affordable housing crisis. And, you know, in looking at this site particularly, the trade-offs of saving the structure based on its existing floor plate relative to the size of the lot. And, you know, we haven't done a structural analysis, but it would seem unlikely that it could really handle going up another 3 stories as per the zoning would allow. Not to mention that going up 3 stories would significantly alter the structure itself. What that would do is limit this building to being able to house 4, possibly 5 units of affordable housing. Current zoning, if we were allowed to build new, really would allow somewhere in the 30 to 40 units of affordable housing. So, you know, we obviously are part of communities, and part of communities means providing a service like affordable housing, but also making sure that communities stay communities and respect their heritage. So, you know, we're interested again in working with the commission and the city on finding a way to satisfy both needs.
All right, thank you very much. I'd like to open this up for commissioners' discussion. I think one of the things we'd looked at with this is that we were looking at including this building in the Union Square Historic District. Am I correct in that?
I know that was a recommendation 7 years ago whenever we prepared that. I don't know where it stands now.
That was one of the ones studied for it.
Eric, what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, I totally respect the trade-offs there. I mean, core value though, I feel like that building is it's unique in that area. I believe beneath all the cladding, there's some distinct stuff there. So I think saying it's not perfectly reserved is sort of a disservice to what's there. And it warrants that being a factor in decisions going forward. So, I mean, I feel like it is better that that building be preserved, or at least that discussion taking place while we look at what happens with it. I know there are ways of adding structures on top of things. It doesn't always work out, but that's my take on this at this point.
That's generally my sense as well. I mean, I understand, unfortunately or fortunately, we can't take into account what will be going there. And so without thinking about that and just what the structure is, and in spite of the unfortunate siding that's covering things up, there's still interesting aspects about it, and I think that it should be, it would be preferably preserved.
I do want to remind the commission you do have to take public comment on this tonight.
Yes, well, that will come after the commissioners talk about it. Caitlin, do you have some thoughts on this?
Yeah, I agree with Eric and Robin that for reasons of architecture, I would find it significant. And I just want to, while he's not here, I know I can't speak for him, but Mark made comments in our discussion on historic significance last month about the ties to the cultural heritage of the city. I believe this was a Catholic institution, school. So
School, yeah.
he might have said that if he were here right now.
And I might add that the church that is across the corner on Webster is also a local historic district. I know that because I put up the plaque on the front of it.
You put up a lot of those plaques.
I put up a lot of those plaques, yeah. And our findings, just to go back on this, was that we found it historically, culturally, and architecturally significant, and that it remains massing in the original form with quite a bit of detail still in place, including the pilasters, the entrance doorway window. And while some features have been covered in places by siding, the structure is a distinct and character-defining one that has been there as a school for some time and for more than 100 years amongst a little niche of houses. So I agree, and Mr. Nicholson, we cannot take into consideration what will be put in its place, if anything. All we can look at is the historic significance of the structure itself that is there today. I hope you appreciate that.
No, I fully understand that. You know, I understand the balance. We've done a lot with historic structures in our work in Cambridge. We have a great relationship with Charlie Sullivan. He does a lot of work with us, both in our housing division as well as our home improvement program. So we're very cognizant of the importance of historic preservation. You know, we just have competing values at the same time. And that's not to say that one's more important than the other. So, you know, I hear where you're going, and you know, I think, you know, ultimately there's probably a place where we can come together and figure something out on the best way to reach both goals. I know there was a lot of discussion the first time in regards to the window, the Turkish window, for architectural exoticism, as well as its connection to the church and the school, and being a women's school at a time way back when. And you know, I'm hoping we can come to something where, you know, some components are reused within a new structure and, you know, some level of recognition and historic preservation of the connection, if not the building, can be agreed upon at some point. But, you know, that's my understanding, a discussion that I will end up continuing with Sarah and the planning staff and ultimately come back before you on. But we're happy to go down that path. And, you know, want to have a good relationship with you, want to have a good relationship with the city and the neighbors. So looking forward to doing something that works for everybody.
Good. And just a comment on that. I don't see that historic preservation and affordable housing necessarily at loggerheads with each other. I think we coexist quite well, because mostly the properties that we look at that do end up getting demolished, for instance, the one on Broadway that we just discussed, that will probably end up with a multi-family of 2 or 3 units, which won't have affordable housing in it, but they'll be luxury condos. So probably more than 95% of the demolitions that come before us don't end up as affordable housing. We do have some that are larger that do go into affordable housing, and that's good. We need that. But there's no point giving up the culture and the historic significance of the city that people want to live in just to have affordable housing, because then people won't want to live here anyway. So I think it's a coexistence of the two that is symbiotic to a very large extent. And I'd like to see that sort of become even more pervasive. And perhaps some of the people who advocate so strongly for affordable housing could look at that in the light which I just articulated. So this is also a public hearing on this. And with that, what I'd like to do is I'd like to open this up to any members of the public who would like to, who are attending, who would like to comment on this particular structure and what is proposed here to demolish. Is there anybody, Sarah, that's raising their hand?
So anybody who wants to make a comment, please use the hand function on GoToWebinar next to your name. I see Michael Katz, and I am going to unmute you as soon as I can scroll down to your name again. So Michael, I have unmuted you. If you would unmute yourself, that would be terrific. There you go.
Good morning. I am indeed a neighbor right around the corner from this building. I walk by it multiple times a day. It is, at the moment, it's been covered in all kinds of horrible ways, but I know many people in the neighborhood who went to school in that building. And I know that if there's any, I feel strongly, if there's any way that we can preserve at least portions of it, the proportions inside are spectacular, which doesn't help for affordable housing, but they are gorgeous spaces inside. And I sure would like to see an attempt made to make it work, both for preservation needs and for the needs of housing. And that's all I have to say.
Good, thank you, Michael. Good to talk to you. Is there anybody else, Sarah? You're muted. Sarah, you're muted.
For all that I like to talk, I mute myself. Michael, if you could just unraise your hand, that would be helpful. I don't see anybody else with their hand raised.
I was going to say that we're often thankful that you do mute yourself, but I wasn't going to say that.
I'm sure you're not the only person.
Okay, so hearing no more people raising their hand, or seeing no more hands raised and knowing that there's nobody else out there in the public who'd like to comment on this, I'm going to close that section of the public hearing. And I want to bring this back now to the commissioners to put this to a vote as to whether this should be preferably preserved. And I think, Craig Nicholson, you're aware of what the process here is, that between significance and preferably preserved and negotiation period?
Correct, yes.
Okay, good. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to present this. This is hpc.dmo 2020.19, 24 Webster Avenue. And we're voting on whether this should be preferably preserved or not. All those in favor of preferably preserving this, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll do a roll call. That's Robin,
Yes.
Caitlin,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Mark, are you back yet? And I say yes. Okay. So now what we do is we enter into a period of negotiation, Craig Nicholson, to work out exactly what that preferably preserved means and come to a meeting of the minds. Okay?
You do the
Sounds great.
So we're going to look at the findings, okay, as to why we determined this to be preferably preserved. And I'd like to read out the findings once more that we found for when we actually determined it to be significant. And the findings are that the structure is culturally, historically, and architecturally significant. It retains massive and original form with quite a bit of detail still in place, including the pilasters and the entrance doorway window, though several features are covered in places by siding. The structure is a distinct and character-defining one that has been there as a school for some time in Union Square for more than 100 years amongst the little niche of houses. Do we want to add anything to those findings?
I think that says it.
May I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
The way I heard you mention the existing as a school for more than 100 years, I want to make sure that that's clarified because it stopped being a school back in like the 1960s. So it has not been a school for a significant amount of time.
It said as a school for some time and for more than 100 years amongst the little niche of houses. Okay, there was a comma after some time.
Yeah, just wanted to make sure.
No, grammatically they're separate, right? Which means legally they're separate as well. All right?
So both Alan and I have a penchant for the Oxford comma.
Yeah,
this is a good time to say that Mark is back, and I like the Oxford comma too.
Thank you, Mark. So I'm going to put these to the vote. All those in favor of finding these findings to be still consistent for preferably preserved, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Once again, we'll do the roll call. That's Robin.
Yes.
Caitlin.
Yes.
Eric.
Yes.
And myself. And
this is Mark. I will abstain since I missed the conversation.
Good. I was going to suggest that you do so. Okay, so we'll be back in touch with this, Mr. Nicholson, okay? And staff will commence the discussions on this.
Yep, that is my understanding of the process. Thank you all for your time and look forward to talking to you again.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for coming. It's appreciated. Let's move on to the next one, which is hpc.dmo 2020.20, 13 Clyde Street. The applicant, Scott Zink. Is Scott Zink with us?
Yes, he is, and I'm going to unmute him right now. Okay, Scott, I have unmuted you, and you are unmuted on your side. There you go. Anybody else with you that I need to unmute?
You guys see me?
Anybody else I need to unmute from your team, or is it just you?
Just me. Yep. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, would you like to talk about this, Mr. Zink?
Yeah, I think, I covered most of it all at our last meeting. I guess I would just sort of reiterate, I do respect that it's a, a worker's cottage, and when it was built, I'm sure it was, built that way for a certain reason. I think, when you're inside the house, the floor to floor elevations, again, as I mentioned last time, are not what you'd hope for. And there's a reason we're not really seeing them built this way anymore. The basement has, a 6'4" ceiling. The first floor has low ceilings, and then there's a, a tall pitch roof, which you almost need a ladder to sort of get up to. So, I think, again, I do respect the workers' cottage, and I'm glad, 25 Clyde Street was, the one that was on the historical register was renovated, a few years ago. I think it looks pretty good. But again, this one, I think, it's the house style itself has some faults to it in terms of livability. And again, that's why you're not seeing people kind of build them like this these days. And, the only other comment is obvious in terms of the architectural details on the exterior. It's vinyl sided, vinyl windows. It really doesn't have a ton of, those sort of, neat architectural details. So, that's pretty much it.
Okay, thanks. I'd like to open this up for commissioners for discussion. As I do that, what I'd like to do is I'd like to say that we did declare it significant and that we voted to adopt the findings, which are that this is a typical workers' cottage in the area, and the area had a lot of workers' cottages in it. And it serves a representation of the broad economic, cultural, and social history of the city, and that the structure retains integrity through original massing, even though there are additions. The structure is one of a building type that is relatively scarce in the city now. So with that, I'd like comments from the commissioners, please. Eric, you look like you're ready to say something.
And it's, I still have the same opinion that I did at the significance hearing, which is that these little warehouses are they're a dying breed, and they're kind of near and dear to me. And I do see this one's had an addition glommed onto the back of it, and that's the vinyl siding, the windows. That's often the case with these, because I think these have spent so much of their life being underappreciated, being simple by design, that people didn't really see. It's not like there's a lot of gingerbread details to keep. Usually it's just a portico on the front door that was the thing that they would do. So I still see it as something that would be preferably preserved. Yeah, I thought.
Robin, Caitlin?
I agree with what Eric just summarized, and that I still think that it's, it's very important to the overall feel of the neighborhood.
Caitlin, do you have thoughts on this?
I don't have anything more to add, really.
And Mark?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's both what it is in itself is problematic as it's become over the various renovations, but also as, a set of similar structures in an area that used to have a lot more of them. It'll be sad when they're all gone. And so what we can do to keep them hanging on for a little longer seems worthwhile to me.
Yeah, because to me, there's a popular misconception that historic preservation commissions only look at the grand multi-story Queen Anne houses and the big mansards, whereas what we're interested in is that a good cross profile of all the historic buildings and structures in the city, whatever they might be. And this was a very blue collar area for a long time. So looking at workers' cottages is important.
And they often
Yeah,
predate the grandiose houses. That's something you don't realize, that these are often older than those nice old Victorians and things like that. We overlook that too.
yeah. Okay, well, this is a public meeting. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to open this up for any public comment. Sarah, is anybody holding up their hand from the public? So this is a public hearing. Sarah, you there?
Mr. Chair, this is Charlotte Lease, another planner at the City of Somerville speaking. It seems like Sarah is on the phone briefly. Rajiv Raman, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly, is raising his hand and indicating that he wishes to speak. Rajiv, you are unmuted.
Yes.
Hi,
Please.
can you hear me okay?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Could
Yeah,
you just say your name again so that we can take that down?
sure.
Rajiv.
My first name is Rajiv, R-A-J-I-V as in Victor.
Rajiv.
My last name is Raman, R-A-M-A-N as in Nancy.
Thank you.
So first meeting I'm attending here, so found it interesting so far. I live across the street at 14 Clyde Street. It is also one of these old workers' cottages. So I'm very familiar with the property. Lived here for about 11 years. Yeah, I don't remember who said it before, but I would like to second that these are a dying breed in our neighborhood. Many have already been demolished. A lot of the houses in this area are built around the same time, the 1860s, 1870s. So they're all celebrating their 150th anniversary around this time. Yeah, they do predate many of the grander houses in the surrounding neighborhoods. So I do like what was done at 25 Clyde. I think that they did, the end result was more housing, denser housing for a changing neighborhood, but a preservation of the original structure. Yeah, actually the previous owner who had lived there for many decades had been by here when she heard about the demolition and was shooting some old photos of the house just about a week or two ago. Yeah, that's just a little color to the fact that it was owned by one family for a very long time.
All right. Thank you, Rajiv. Appreciate your coming and attending the meeting and commenting on this. Is there anybody else in the public who would like to comment on this?
Mr. Chair, this is Charlotte Lee speaking again. I am not seeing anyone else in the public raising their hand and indicating that they wish to speak.
Okay. Well, with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to close the public part of this hearing and come back to the commissioners so that we can discuss this. Is there, Robin, Mark, Caitlin, Eric, did you want to add anything else to this discussion?
No, thank you.
No. All right. Then we're going to vote on 13 Clyde Street, HPC.DMO 2020.20, and this is for preferably preserved. All those in favor of declaring this preferably preserved, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll do the roll call. That's Robin.
Yes.
Caitlin.
Yes.
Eric.
Yes.
Mark.
Yes.
And I vote yes too. Okay, Scott, you know where this is now because you've had dealings with the commission before. So, yep, So this leads us into a position of discussion, which can go up to 9 months.
Okay.
So that we can come to a meeting of the minds. Now, what I'd like to do is I'd like to just vote on the findings. We found the findings previously that the structure was typical of the workers' cottage in this particular area that are becoming fewer and fewer and fewer. It serves as a representation of the broad economic, cultural, and social history of the city. That the structure retains integrity through original massing, even though there are additions. The structure is one of a building type that is relatively scarce in the city. Do we want to add anything to those particular findings?
Those are fine with me.
Robin, Mark?
Nothing additional from me.
Okay. In that case, I'd like to put it to the vote on the findings, and these are the findings for 13 Clyde Street, HPC.DMO 2020.20, that we accept the findings as read and as per the declaration of significance on the property last month. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And once again, the roll call. That's Robin,
Yes.
Caitlin,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
and myself. All right, Scott,
Yep.
any questions?
No, I think I'm good. Thank you, guys.
Thank
Okay,
you.
we hope you can do something good with this property, Scott.
All right. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Take care.
Yeah.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, moving right along, we're now in the other business section of this. And the first thing that I'd like to bring up is the minutes from 7/21.
Hey, Alan.
Mr. Chairman, I'm
Sorry.
sorry. I wanted to let you know that I have been trying, which is part of the reason I was like on the phone, figuring out what to do with 15 Campbell Park. And I have emailed the agent who was here last time presenting twice. I have tried to call him, left a voicemail. I'm now going to see if I can even get a hold of the owners. And can we just, continue to put this on hold until we get through some of this other business stuff? And I'm just going to have to go on mute and ask Charlotte to take over for me for a little bit while I try to get a hold of somebody. And then we can discuss how to proceed if I run into a dead end.
Otherwise, we can just continue it.
Yes, I think so. Unless from what you were looking at, you're willing to approve it, but you have to take, public comment too. And I think, I would think you might have some questions for them.
I think we need the applicant for this one.
Yeah, I think you have some questions for them. Exactly.
We've got some questions.
If you'll allow me to continue to try and dig and see if I can get a hold of somebody, I'm gonna go on mute and do that at the moment.
Please.
Thank you.
All right, so can we, while she's doing that, we can look at minutes. Has everybody had a chance to go through the minutes? I had a few minor ones of just on a couple of typos. And I'm just trying to find them. Yeah. on page 5, there's a paragraph that starts off, Mike commented that splitting the decision would be, comma, because it would allow the team to get a project permitted. I'm not sure that that sentence makes sense.
Noted. I will revisit that and figure out the correction. Thanks, Alan.
Okay, and on page, the next page, which is, it's very faint. I think it's page 6. In the middle, Alan Bingham thought it was interesting to note that the whole porch kicks out probably 80 inches or so into the driveway. That's actually 18 inches, not 80.
Sorry about that. That's a big difference. I will change that too.
80 inches probably meant they couldn't get a car down there.
Yeah, I wasn't using my braid when I was listening and recording.
It's that Aussie accent sometimes be tough to parse.
Right, that was it.
Page 9, I think it's the 3rd or 4th last paragraph, which is just a sentence. Alan Bingham asked if Stephen had, I think that means seen the recommended conditions. I think you're just missing an N on that.
Got it. Thank you.
And on page 14, second paragraph, Caitlin Hart agreed with Eric, noting that the building always catches her eye. She said that something first, at that, I think you mean at first glance. I think we're missing an A in front of the T.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for these sloppy minutes.
Oh, that's all right.
Yes, I didn't proofread them. It was long.
And then, yeah,
thanks
further down that page, in the first paragraph on 13 Clyde Street, and Scott Zink presented, he said that he has owned the structure. I think you're missing an R on 4 for about 10 years.
Noted.
And that's all I've got for you, Caitlin. They're nitpicky little things.
No, thank you for paying attention when I was not.
But apart from that, I think it captures the essence of it. Does anybody else have any comments on it? Okay, then let's put that to the vote with those few corrections. Voting to accept the minutes for 9:15. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. The next one is the HPC secretary role. And Caitlin, I hear that you're going to be moving to more sophisticated digs.
I don't think more sophisticated, maybe more rural. Yeah, I've decided to leave Somerville, which is a really hard decision for a number of reasons, including leaving this. So someone else will have to take the minutes, unfortunately. And I don't know if Sarah or Alan have any more guidance there.
We're going to miss you, Caitlin.
Yeah.
I'll miss you all too.
Where are you headed?
I'm not really sure right now. I'm able to do my job in Boston remotely. So for the moment, I'm staying with family in New Hampshire. And ultimately, I may end up in Western Mass, but everything is TBD thanks to COVID and the flexibility it allows and the uncertainty of it all.
Well, I hope you enjoy all those possibilities and thinking through them, and good luck with all of that. And I do not want to be secretary, so I will put that out there.
First right of refusal.
So when is this taking place, Caitlin? What's the timeline?
My residency in Somerville officially ends November 1st. So, so this is actually, I have some legal questions, I guess, for Sarah, because I am also leaving vacant the, unfortunately, the CPC role.
Yes.
And Judith, who runs that committee, had kind of asked me to either find a replacement for November. However, a lot of the decision making that the year has led up to takes place in November. So ideally for that committee, I would stay on and kind of see the year through. However, I'm not sure what I'm actually allowed to do there.
I
So
have a
that's a
suggestion. If you're not allowed to stay on, it would be great if you were, but since we have, it's always great to give someone assignments who's not here, but since I believe Mr. Dick Bauer was the commission's former representative to that committee, perhaps he could be prevailed upon to return in an interim basis while we figure out the secretary and the CPC roles.
I think his terms have expired. I don't know whether he can stand back for X number of terms or not. Are you aware of that, Sarah?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have to look into that with council because I think they might be limited to the total number of years period, but I want to double check on that.
I think it is. I seem to remember something to that effect.
I think that's the case. But I'll have to get back to you all by next meeting and hopefully before then and let you know.
Caitlin, if in the interim period, if I could stand in for you at CPA.
Okay.
Right?
Thank you. I'm
CPC
sorry to
meetings.
leave that vacancy as well.
I'd want to be briefed by you first on what the status is, brought up to date. But I'm quite prepared to, on an interim basis, as a temporary thing. All right.
Yes.
Because it's, Mark, I think it's unfair to sort of dog Dick in for that with him not being here.
You're a
Because I
good
know he
man,
wants
Mr.
to see
Chairman. I accept your stepping in. I think that's an even better solution. It's always easier for me to put someone up who's not here rather than look someone in the eye and say, you should do it. But since you volunteered, you should do it.
All right. Am I saying, is that really your way of saying it's always better to put somebody up to do it that's not you?
Yes. Yeah. Mark
Wait,
has
did
a
I say
career
that?
in front of him down at the State House, I think. All right.
Sorry,
So,
Mark, you just left it too open for that.
No, I agree. I've always liked playing hot potato.
so we need to find a secretary.
You do need to find a secretary. That doesn't necessarily mean you need to decide on one tonight, but people do need to think about it. And I did have a conversation with Alan this week, and the secretary's role is to take minutes. And I did make it clear to Alan, under no uncertain terms will I be taking minutes. Period. I literally do not have one iota of bandwidth left in my life. And running these meetings, as you can see, I have to jump on the phone, I have to do all these other things. That won't be the case forever, but the secretary will need to take minutes, which is why it's the most popular position for people to run for.
Okay, then with that said, I think what we should do is we should send out an email to all the commissioners, alerting them to this reality, and asking for volunteers so that we can discuss it at the next meeting.
Yes, because at the next meeting, we will have to have somebody taking said minutes.
Yes.
Or
And
you
do we
round robin it.
Do we have a special meeting in early November? Has that been scheduled? I'm sorry if I missed that.
We can't talk about that right now, but I'm going to send you, that was just clarified. Everything has been clarified today, so I will have an email out to you in the next day or two securing that date.
Perfect, thank you.
Yes, thank you all.
There is another thought that I had on this subsequent to our discussion earlier, Sarah, is that we could even, if we can't find somebody who's going to accept that role, then what we could do is we could share that role on a round robin basis.
I was going to say that there's nothing that precludes you from doing that.
And Robin, don't take any that statement.
None taken.
Thank you. I'm trying to be politically correct here as well.
How many
Okay.
commissioners are we these days? I can't even keep track of who's still doing this.
I don't think you can count Anthony.
Right. As everybody heard us discuss before. I don't think I think his life has changed such that he's not going to be able to really do this. But I just got another email from him tonight. So normally I send this to 10 of you. So minus Caitlin, theoretically minus Anthony. If he decides not to continue, then you're looking at 8 of you. Knowing that DJ predominantly does landscape architecture, which means there's 7 of you. Which I'll be honest with you, for a regular commission, that is a reasonable size to have for Historic Preservation Commission. The fact that you guys have like 12/13 slots is unheard of. Unheard of.
I thought we were 14.
Yeah, well, I say 12-14, yes. Because I'll be honest with you, the number is so unwieldy that I have a hard time remembering just how high it is. So, I mean, it is a very unusual number, because imagine if all of you were here at the same time, right? That's very unusual. So usually a commission will have like 5 + 2 alternates, tends to be typical. But we would have to look at your bylaws and things like that if you wanted to change those types of things, and, you know, possibly the whole ordinance that sets up the commission to begin with. But that's another chat for another day. I do have good news, though. I'll let you finish up with this in a second. I was able to get a hold of the property owner for 15 Campbell, and he has joined us online. So I mean, the poor man, I think I didn't want to panic him, but and Victor, I'll unmute you when they're ready, but like, I'm sorry if I panicked you, but I actually have him, so that's good. He was expecting somebody else to be here representing him, just so the council knows. Sorry, just so the commission knows.
All right, so shall we handle that one now?
Yes, let's, if you're done with the secretary discussion.
We have. The only other thing we have in other business is the demolition review ordinance.
Okay. And let me just say, I know I've said this to Caitlin already, but I'm really devastated that she's leaving and I didn't hear the explanation, but whatever it is, I hope all goes well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm a big,
Caitlin,
I'll put in the plug for Western Mass.
Caitlin, we appreciate your efforts, not only your inputs, your thoughtful inputs on all the discussions, but also your doing the minutes and doing them so well. I think you've done better minutes than anybody else has ever done.
Hands down.
I'm
Here,
sorry
here.
they're so
Yeah.
long, but thank you.
So I'd like to thank you for that.
They're complete.
It's been a pleasure working with you, frankly.
Yes.
Likewise, thank
Your
you.
insight's been great.
So let's go back to 15 Campbell Park.
Okay, so so the owner of the property, one of the owners is Victor Del Porto, and so I am going to unmute him now. And so now you're self-muted, Victor, so all that you would have to do is unmute yourself. There you go.
Hey there, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
And I think, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay with you, and if it's okay with the commission, if it's okay with Victor, I can step in and fill in the blanks as to what was talked about with the with Victor's
Good
development
idea.
agent.
Yep.
Can explain what happened, but at your discretion and when you're ready.
Why don't you give us a running update so we start off on all on the same foot?
Sure. Okay. So at the last meeting, we decided to, or you decided to split the certificate. So allowing the certificate for the dormer to be determined separate from the windows. The initial proposal was to replace all of the original windows in the structure. And there was advice from the commission that they look into restoring the windows. I informed Mike, their representative, as to the types of places in the area that that do window restoration. So I was able to give him some pointers in that direction. And as always, we don't recommend as a city agency. We can only alert people to what we know about, and always the caveat that this is not a recommendation that you use these places. So I'm very firm about that. So I believe, and Victor, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that Mike had three different businesses come out and evaluated the property.
Correct.
And okay, and so back and forth. So I explained to Mike that one of the challenges when you buy a property in a local historic district comes with certain responsibilities. One of them is that there's lots of change that you can do, but there are some things that some things are important to the homeowner and other things are important to the city, and it's the city's responsibility to ensure that those things are preserved. One of those things being original windows. And so I talked to Mike about, well, let's look, does it make sense to look at a compromise proposal rather than looking to replace all of the windows, all of the original windows? What about the ones just on the front facade? Actually, Mike proposed just what about the ones on the front facade? To which I countered and said, well, let's look at the ones on the front facade, and they're in the report. And Victor, you now have that as well. And each of the windows under discussion right now are the ones with the red dots on them. So is the commission willing to consider allowing for all of the windows with the red dots on them that are very highly visible, including 3 sides of the turret? There are 3 sides of the tower. But the ones that are not really visible, right? So the ones on the back side of that tower really aren't visible from the public way at all. So one could argue they might not actually come into the commission's purview. But there are a couple of original windows on the right elevation of the house that are visible, but they are minimally visible. Would the commission consider letting those be the replacement windows that have been proposed? And of course, anything that was not visible from a public way naturally doesn't come under the purview of the commission. Then whatever, if you were to allow replacement windows in those suggested areas, they would have to match whatever new windows were put on the dormer. So that is the current proposal. And please tell me if I didn't make sense or I misspoke in some fashion. I've spoken so much tonight, I'm cheeks are flushed.
I would also add, I don't know if this is helpful, but of those 3 vendors that our representative spoke with, 2 of them actually turned down the job because they said it would take too long. There's too many to do, and so that 3rd vendor that did say it was possible is the one we've been looking at a little bit more closely at this project with, and so I also assume that this is a more manageable project for a window restoration, but again, Sarah probably knows a lot more about this than I do, but in case it's helpful.
So this is 10 windows you're talking about?
Correct.
Just, I've noticed on the inside that there are actually 5 facets to that tower. Is there not another wall that's off on the left side that we're not seeing because of the camera angle?
It would be on the right side.
Okay, but if I go back onto your picture that you took of the inside, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 windows.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. If I missed one, then that's my mistake.
Well, I think that the one you missed is not in that picture, but it's between the tower and the front face of the house.
Well, while you discuss, I'm going to go on Google Street View and take a look right now.
Okay. But in backing up, we've done this sort of thing before, and I'm amenable to that. The window you're proposing is a pretty good reproduction. So if you're to do that in the right side, it would be very minimally noticed. And if you're putting your resources into the front that 99.9% of people actually see, I think that's a good solution.
And I do believe when I spoke with my representative, he did mention that it would be 12 windows, not 10. So I do think there's like one more frame to the turret.
That's correct. So that's my mistake that I did not include that. So Eric is correct that on the left of the turret, there are 2 more windows, one on top of the other. So it would be 12 windows.
And that back wall of the turret, obviously we don't see it, so whatever. The only thing, as the homeowner, would you want to see one window and that it doesn't match the others? It's a question for you. You want to bite the bullet and do that back edge.
And that's your choice, Victor, because it's not visible from a public way, but just something for you to think about as you as a homeowner visually look at it later. Sorry, that was my dog. I apologize.
Putting my realtor hat on, Victor, I would recommend keeping those consistent within that room as opposed to having one that's not matching the others in the turret.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I'm okay with that.
But it's, as Sarah said, we can't, since that back side is not visible from the street, it's up to you, but it just, my professional advice is that you would appreciate that as you sit in that.
So the, assuming that the commission is okay with this solution, either way, you'd only be like the certificate would only speak to these 10 windows, and then you're just recommending we would add the other 2. Is that right?
Oh, the 12 windows.
The certificate would speak to the 12 windows, so that the 2 that you don't see on the left-hand side. So the 12 that Mike originally talked to you about. And then everything else, it would be up to you.
Okay.
And so what the certificate can be written that any remaining original windows are the owner's choice as to whether to restore or replace with, the window approved. So that way, if you decide after all to restore it, you don't have to come back for a change in the certificate. So it covers you both ways.
Okay.
And I think to Robin's point, Robin's a realtor, that it would be something that's consistent with the value of the property to make sure that those in the turret all look the same from the inside as well. But that's not something we could enforce or even, push in any way. But basically, it's just a recommendation that you might consider because it just makes sense.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm just curious, what are they doing? A full restoration? Are they reputtying? Are they stripping them? Or like what? This doesn't affect my decision, but I'm curious how far of a restoration they're doing for you.
I can answer that if you want me to, Victor. I've looked at the.
Yes, please. I know the document that has that information, but I wouldn't be able to tell you what it says.
That's okay. So it's reglazing, it's insulating. At one point, there was, I think, discussion of restoring the weights and pulleys, and I advised Mike that that's the interior and that therefore is not your purview, so that does not need to be done. There are certainly ways to get them to run nice and efficiently. Weather strip, insulate, and use an exterior storm.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
And I will be articulating all that in the condition as well.
Cool.
Yeah, I actually like what they did at the West Branch Library is they kept the weights and they reconditioned the windows. Old Bostonian did it, but they replaced the ropes with chains.
Yeah, correct. Yep.
Which is really nice. I mean, Eric, are you okay? It looks like it's fallen over.
No, I was trying to show you my chains here, but it's too dark. They're lost in contrast.
Didn't know that my observation on West Branch Library had such an effect on you.
No, I did that 18 years ago. I started these. This is my coronavirus project. These are curved window sash that I took all apart and had a new rail made for one of the things and epoxied. Not a lot of work, but it is doable.
Yeah, curves are challenging.
All the windows in the West Branch Library at the back are all curved too.
Oh.
And they've done a brilliant job on that restoration. Anyway.
One question, and hopefully this is the right group to ask this question to. If we say you approve this proposal, are we locked into that original company that we got the proposal from, or could we also?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. The commission does not approve the entity doing the work. They only approve the work being done, meaning the proposed work being done.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so you could switch to somebody else. Yeah, you'd want to make sure that they did it the same way, and we're actually restoring it. So.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. And any commissioners have any other thoughts on this? And what I'd like to do is I'd like to open this up to, do I need to open this up to the public? No.
Yes, you do. Yeah, because it's still it's a local historic district property. So.
Charlotte, are there any members of the public that are raising their hands that would like to talk on this?
Mr. Chairman, I do not see any members of the public raising their hands.
All right, well, hearing Charlotte say that she doesn't see anyone, I'd like to close that section of the public meeting, public hearing. So with that, I think what we'd like to do, I think we're ready to vote on this particular issue. And I'd like to thank you for coming back in and, you know, being able to discuss this with us, because I think this is important.
Victor, thank you. Thank you for picking up a blocked call.
Yeah, of course. And thank you for Sarah for running Victor to ground on this.
I'm so sorry I had to disappear, but really quickly. But you know, we do things like that.
Okay, so we're about to vote on a certificate of appropriateness for 15 Campbell Park, which is HBC.ALT 2020.20. And this is to restore 12 windows on the front street view of the house from the public way that are visible, and to replace any other windows that need replacing with the replacement window of choice that was recommended by the commission. And we have the documentation on those to attach. Is there anything else I need to add to that? Okay, then let's put that to the vote. We're voting on that. This is for 15 Campbell Park, HBC 2020.20. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and I'll do the roll call for that. That's Robin,
Yes.
Caitlin,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
and I'm voting yes too. Okay, good. So Victor, you're going to be good to go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for working with us. I mean, I know this has taken a lot last week, but I think that this is a great solution for you. And this is a delightful cottage, delightful house.
Yeah, I'm excited to start picking it up.
We're excited for you too. Thank you so much. Good luck with it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Victor.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so moving back to other business. You put down the demolition review ordinance, Sarah.
Did.
Would you like to talk about this? Or do you
Would
want
I
me
like to? Not really, but no, yes, of course. I'll give you the highlights. Because I think what we should do is at some point have a meeting with a few of us and go over the nuances of it, and I can meet with you at your convenience, like a couple people at a time, and we can go over its nuances, and then what it means for you as a commission when you are discussing this in public, and then what it means for us and staff, and then what we end up doing behind the scenes. So as Alan can also tell you, it's been about 4 years since it was proposed. We've gone, when I say going back and forth a lot with the council, not not in an argumentative way, but meaning there's been additional information that they would ask for, or data that they would ask for, process questions, etc. They had at least one public hearing on it, if not more. And yeah, well, they've had more public meetings, and maybe it's been a 2 or 3 public hearings. Honestly, I lose count. But it wasn't as much as the zoning ordinance, so we have that in our favor. But so that the major, what happened the night of the meeting when it actually went to the full council, I think I'd emailed all of you to say that it had been voted out of committee and that it was going to the full council. And then when we saw the agenda for the council, we thought that they were just going to report out and say, okay, we're voting, this has been voted out of committee, this is just the report out of the committee itself. And then it wasn't until they started like 10 minutes, 15 minutes into talking about it, and I was taking literally my first vacation day of the entire year, and I got a call saying, hey, they're talking about this and they're taking it up. So that was unbeknownst to me. Otherwise, had I known in advance, I would have said to all of you, hey, they are actually going to take this up on the night that they did, the 27th, and discuss it, so at least that you could observe the conversation, because there was no public comment taken at that point. So the final proposal that came out of committee was for 18 months, an 18-month demo delay, demo review period, excuse me. And then on the floor that night, the counselor from Ward 2 initially suggested that it remain at 9 months, but that he was very glad to see all of the procedural changes, wording changes, how it was cleaned up, straightened out, and made a lot clearer. And then it was debated on the floor between counselors who had said that they had said in the past that they were comfortable with 12 months, or those who were comfortable with 18. And then they talked about it on the floor, and then the counselor from Ward 2 amended his amendment to be 12 months. And then that was the vote that came on the floor, and then that was voted, with the exception of one who recused himself, that was voted unanimously. So it's an increase in 3 months from the 9 that we have, but there are other things that it does do in terms of process. That it allows an applicant to concede historic significance, and from a procedural standpoint, from a review standpoint, it captures things like in the past we had the substantial demolition, right, was something that was really a catch-all and was really a challenge. We never had a definition of partial demolition or serial demolition, etc. So now at least there's a 50% cutoff of volume that you have purview over. There are the significant other changes in that with regard to how the ordinance has been more clearly defined, and it triggers review for demo, not just when a demolition permit is submitted to ISD, but whenever anybody submits a demolition permit to ISD, or they're an application for zoning relief, whether it's special permit, variance, or whatever, an HPC application. So it's really intended to trigger staff to review a property to catch potential demolition in a way that we haven't been able to before because of the way the old ordinance was written. There are a couple of properties in particular that were the catalyst for this, whereby an applicant said, well, I don't come under the demolition review ordinance because I didn't file for a demo permit with ISD. So there are a lot of changes in that regard. The exemption area is expanded. It was just Assembly Square and Inner Belt. It now, the D parcels in Union Square, those that have already been deemed for disbursement under urban renewal. Boynton Yards is another one. And I'm trying to think, I think portions of Brick Bottom might be included.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm so tired now, I can't even remember. But But
If I
it
may,
also, yes,
Sarah,
please
I
take
think
over, because I'm just going to prattle.
one of the things we wanted to do was to clarify the language
Mhm.
so that it was less subject to creative interpretation by the lawyers
Mhm.
and questioned by applicants, so that
Mhm.
everybody who read it would have a clear understanding of what it was. We tried to make it crystal clear.
Right.
And a lot of this goes into the definitions of
Mhm.
what is a demolition and what is allowed. So that is quite well defined. But some of the other things that have changed, okay, is the notification. The
Mhm.
notification has changed a little bit, as Sarah noticed. The criteria for determination of significance is now 75 years old. All right, it used to be 50, it's now 75. When we looked at what was out there between 50 and 75, we found just a handful of buildings.
That's
So
right.
it seemed like this was sort of, we were seeing stuff that we didn't need to see. And the other thing I think that's important here is that when we come down to looking at the, if you look down in, I think it's on page 6, a determination, if somebody looks at hardship, we look at exactly what that hardship means. Now we've got some definitions in there as to exactly what it is and what they have to claim. And the other thing that's important is the peer review. So at any time, we could call for a peer review of a professional report if we deem it necessary. We've all seen those very self-serving engineering reports that says, yes, there's a leak in the pipe and the floor is misaligned, so we suggest tearing it down.
Mhm.
And so now we can call for a peer review if we think any of those are a little bit sus. The demolition review period, of course, is 12 months. It's, I think it's better than 9, but it's not the 18, which I think we should have had. And the other thing is the enforcement is now, if people do the wrong thing, we've got some teeth in that. It used to be just $300. Now it's $300 per day. So that's got a little bit more teeth in it. So people are going to take a little bit more, I think, notice of it.
And also, if they do illegal, if they demolish illegally, there's the potential for them to not get a building permit for 4 years.
Yeah. Well, initially, when I suggested this to George Proacres, I suggested what they do in Sydney, which is 25 years.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I know. You
We
tear it
heard the
down
Led
illegally
Zeppelin go over,
in
right?
Sydney,
Yeah,
that
that's
thing
tough.
stays fallow for 25 years.
Yeah, that's tough. That's tough.
But it sorted them out pretty quickly.
Mhm.
But that's a bit of a synopsis of it. I think the clarity of the language is so much better now
Mhm.
and so much less subject to interpretation. And it gets us past some of those issues that we've had before.
Yeah.
So I suggest everybody read it. And for anything that comes in, it was adopted on the 27th of September. Anything that comes in now and is lodged with the city after 5th of October, all right, is subject to the new ordinance. Anything that was subject before is grandfathered into the old ordinance.
That's right.
All right.
And the fortunate thing, at least I'll be honest with you from a staff perspective, is that we only have like 2 or 3 at most trailing cases from the old ordinance. We've had a couple more applications come in, but they came in prior to the adoption of the new ordinance. So for me, at least, it's much easier because I'm hoping we're not going to see too much of a, divided agenda where this is subject to the old, this is subject to the new, et cetera, because it gets confusing for everybody in the public too. So, so that's the deal. So I will be training. I'll be setting up some internal training for my fellow planners as well, because it affects all of us. So as a zoning planner, when I handled the whole city over the last roughly 5 years, I was always cognizant of demo. right? And if it would trigger the demo review. Whereas all my other, colleagues weren't necessarily, so they would ask me. So I want to make sure that they're all trained in this as well, because especially now that I'm concentrated more in one ward, as we've gone to a new system, I want to make sure that my colleagues in other wards are aware. And they've been very, very good about contacting me. I also want to be doing some training with my counterpart in ISD, who reviews every single permit that comes into the city, so that he and his soon-to-be new colleague also understand what they need to look for as well.
Can I also suggest that I did ask Adam, but we also have Richie and Sean, who are two lawyers that come before us. It might be a good idea to shoot them an email and say individually, not as copies, but individually, just to suggest that there is a new ordinance that takes effect on anything now. So, and here's the link to the city website.
Right.
Because I think that's a CYA thing to do.
Yeah, I think that's always helpful, for the, people we work with on a regular basis.
Yeah, some of them are quite good at interpreting the regulations.
Oh, the one other thing that is also key is that, so city buildings are exempt. However, the council can call for a review by the
Council has to call for a review by us.
Yep, an advisory review from the HPC.
Yeah, that was very contentious because, we thought the council should eat its own dog food. But ultimately, the council makes decisions on these things anyway.
That's right.
So,
that's right.
And we went through the exercise with the high school.
That's right.
And with the library and other things. So, most people in the city on staff are pretty agreeable.
I like to think I am.
Yeah, is that present company included or excluded?
Yes,
oh, I'm including myself.
I was asking the chair, actually.
Oh, dang.
Well, I answered it. The answer is yes.
Oh, thank you.
Well, with that, I think that sort of concludes our business. Is there anybody have any other thoughts on this?
Just that Caitlin, we'll miss you.
Caitlin, we'll miss you.
And Timothy Deneen wishes you good luck as well. Just to let you know, Tim Deneen, you would see him many times.
Yes, he joined
yes,
our
at
last
our meetings.
meeting.
Yes, at the VNA. Yes, he's lovely.
I will
So
miss
he
him
wishes you the best.
Great.
And you'll send out something on to the commissioners on the
special meeting. Yes, and so that I can tell you it will be the 4th. And I have written a legal notice and it's posted online, but I will send you a formal email.
Okay, and Caitlin, let me know how, through Sarah, of course, how we can get together for the CPC.
I will do that. I'll just note.
I can do an interim stand-in.
While we're all here, next Wednesday is the public hearing in which kind of everyone who has applied for funds will be making their case. So I'll send Sarah some information that she can pass along to you, Alan, but just a heads up there.
Please. Okay. I'll make sure I'm available. I can see my calendar.
If you could send me your raw tonight, Caitlin, because there's a lot that I missed.
Happily.
All right. So do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
So moved.
Oh, Jericho.
So Eric's moving it and you're seconding it, are you, Mark?
Sure.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
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 I think that was unanimous. Okay, meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Well done. Thank you all.